Now, when the player gets here, there are all these spots that the player can fall into and be crushed. This is pretty simple. Bam. That's what happens. So when the player is within proximity of this sensor switch, this area, it'll activate a piston which is attached to this square rock, and yeah, the player is squished. Player's proximity to this switch also activates this sound, the tank engine. It kind of sounds like something moving, some kind of machine operating, and the player doesn't originally know what's going to happen until it's too late and they're squashed. The rest is pretty simple. Now this part is pretty amazing part of the level. You can actually get this part coming up if you beat the level. I believe you just have to beat it in order to unlock this part. I'm not sure. So when this switch is pulled, the big set of rock texture thing is dissolved, and a gate falls down over here on the left. And a camera points and kind of pulls out so the player can really get a scope of what they're about to approach. And then the next camera kind of zooms in on what they're going to do. So each one of these hammers is timed to specifically go up and down at a certain rate so that the player can actually run through. I think there's about 9 hammers per set, and so there's 9 hammers, and then I copied and pasted it about 3 or 4 times. And I found that putting rounded edges on the back of these allows the player to keep going without really getting squished, but it keeps things intense. So anyway, you'll see that it is possible to run through. Next is this part. Pretty easy to figure out, just some pistons and kind of knife-shaped objects. That pushes the player down through here to these spinning wheels, and these are actually very simple. You just take sponge and put them on a motor bolt. And because it's a circle shape, there's a kind of snap to fit thing with the motor bolts. You'll see that it kind of tries to get right in the center right there. It snaps in, and that becomes very handy. Now, there's fire all over the place, and even on the background there's some bits of fire. That's to create a really ominous environment. Especially the deeper you go, the less stone you see. I had these 2 bits of kind of fire prong things attached to pistons, and they move in and out in sync. When the player gets down here, it looks pretty deadly, except there's a pretty obvious green spot over here. If they can make it, there's tons of extra points down there. Then they get here to these swinging platforms. They're pretty easy to make. You just take whatever object you want and attach them to string, and the player will be able to swing back and forth at their own will. Over here is an emitter that emits pieces of molten rock on the left and right. I'm sorry, it's 2 emitters, and they're driven by this little object over here that I created. You can see how it works really. It slides this block to the left and right, and when the block's on the right, it creates things on the left, and when the block's on the left, it creates things on the right. can rearrange these as you want. But this causes them to be made only at a certain time interval, and yeah, that's all you need to know. That's pretty simple to figure out. Okay, this minecart is more complicated than it looks. There's little grab switches on the left and right, and each one of them drives one of these winches attached to this three-way switch, and depending on which way it's each button is grabbed, it'll pull this switch in a different way, and this switch drives this one wheel over here, this motorized wheel right here. And so by grabbing the left button, it'll pull this switch to the left, which will make this motor move forward or to the left, and same thing for the right direction. Pressing the right button will move this to the right and move the motor backwards. So I made this part required because the player is not able to actually jump over these pits of coals, burning coals. So when the player grabs to the right, it'll move backwards. When they grab to the left, it'll move forward. There's kind of like a wheelie bar on the back because with the addition of that checkpoint, the minecart actually was tipping over a lot. The checkpoint's there just so if the player leaves the cart out here and then dies over here, they can still spawn back in the cart. I can't tell you how many levels I've played where something like this is required and then you die and you can't get back to the vehicle because it's physically unreachable. So then the player rides their way up here to this section. These are pretty simple. They're just grab switches on sponge attached to winches, so they pull the player up, to where they go and they grab this. And this does a few things. First, it dissolves this red wall over here. It also activates this permanent switch up here, which is attached to an AND gate, and there's tons of logic gate tutorials available on the Little Big Workshop, so you'll be able to figure out this AND gate pretty simply. So I'll just demonstrate what happens. The player grabs here, the red wall is destroyed, this permanent switch is activated, and this AND gate's first part of the gate is turned on. But the rest of it won't turn on until the second part is turned on, which is this blue gate here. Now, on the